All right, welcome. Every single project, and I mean every project, whether you're building a skyscraper or just planning a weekend getaway, is a bet on the future. We pour time, money, and energy into something today, all in the hope of getting a certain result tomorrow. So, how do we make sure that bet is a smart one? Well, let's open up the Project Manager's Toolkit and find out. One of the best definitions of a project I've ever heard is this: it's simply a problem scheduled for solution. I love that because it just perfectly nails the challenge, right? A problem means there's a gap between where we are and where we want to be. And scheduled for solution, well, that means the answer is somewhere out there in the future. And that right there is the million-dollar question, isn't it? How in the world do you map out a path to a solution that doesn't even exist yet? How do you predict the costs, the time, the value of something that is, by its very nature, a total unknown? Well, that's what project forecasting is all about. So here's our game plan. We're going to break this down into 5 key areas. First, we'll look at the forecasting problem itself. Then we'll dive into how you forecast a project's value. And after that, its timeline. We'll also cover how to check your progress when you're already underway. And finally, we'll tackle the real tricky one: forecasting when you don't even know what the destination is. All right, first up, let's just frame the problem. Being good at this stuff isn't about having some magic crystal ball. It's about having a set of different tools and, more importantly, knowing which one to use to make the smartest bet you possibly can. So the very first forecast we have to make, honestly, it might be the most critical one of all. Before you spend a single dime or 1 hour of anyone's time, you have to answer a brutally simple question. Is this project even worth doing? Is the payoff going to be big enough to justify the effort? And to figure that out, you've basically got 2 tools in your belt. On one side, you've got the simple payback period. It's fast, it's easy, it's kind of the quick and dirty calculation. On the other side, you've got something called net present value, or NPV. Now, this one's a bit more complex for sure, but it gives you a much more realistic picture. Let's see why. The whole difference comes down to this really powerful idea: the time value of money. Think about it. $100 in your hand right now is worth more than a promise of $100 next year, right? Because you could take today's money and invest it. NPV is a forecasting tool that gets this. It discounts any money you'll make in the future to figure out what it's really worth today. And wow, does this example really bring it home? Check out this office heating project. You spend £150,000 and it saves you $25,000 a year. Simple math says you make your money back in 6 years. Easy. But when we use NPV and apply a discount rate to those future savings, their value today is way lower. Suddenly, the forecast for breaking even jumps from 6 years all the way to 17 years. That's a massive difference. One forecast says go, the other says, whoa, hold on a minute. Okay, so we figured out if a project is even worth doing. Now for the next big headache for every project manager out there. How long is this thing really going to take? This is where so many projects just go completely off the rails. And just like before, there's more than one way to tackle this. You've got the critical path method, or CPM, which is great for predictable stuff. It just asks for one single time estimate for each task. But for projects with more mystery, there's something called PERT, and PERT is much more realistic. It embraces uncertainty by asking for a whole range of estimates, because it knows that, stuff happens. So how does PERT work its magic? It's pretty clever. It asks for 3 numbers for every task. What's the best case scenario, the worst case, and what's the most likely time it'll take? Then it plugs them into this weighted average formula. And look closely, it doesn't just average the 3. It multiplies the most likely time by 4, giving it way more weight. This keeps the forecast grounded in reality while still respecting that things could go amazingly well or terribly wrong. Forecasting isn't a one and done kind of thing you just do at the start. The future is always shifting. So once you're moving, you absolutely need a GPS for your project, a way to constantly check your position and ask, hey, are we still on track? Are we still headed for the right place on time and on budget? And for that, there's this incredibly powerful tool called Earned Value Management, or EVM. It sounds complicated, but it all boils down to 3 numbers. First is planned value, or PV. That's simply the value of the work you planned to have done by now. Then there's actual cost, AC. That's what you've actually spent. And the most important one, earned value, EV. That's the real value of the work you've actually completed. Comparing these 3 gives you a brutally honest update. Let's break that down. Your Cost Performance Index, or CPI, just compares what you got done to what you spent. In this case, our earned value is 50 grand, but our actual cost is only 45. That gives us a CPI of 1.11. The magic number here is 1. If you're over 1, you're golden. It means you're getting more bang for your buck. We're under budget. But, and this is a big but, look what happens when we check the schedule. The Schedule Performance Index, or SPI, compares the work we've done to the work we plan to do. So our earned value is still $50,000, but we had planned to get $55,000 worth of work done by now. That gives us an SPI of 0.91. And if you're under 1 here, it means you're behind schedule. This is so important. We're saving money, but we're falling behind. And here is where EVM just feels like magic. Because based on our performance so far, we can create a new forecast for the final cost. It's called the Estimate at Completion, or EAC. And because we've been so efficient with our money, our new forecast says the project will cost $90,000, not the $100,000 we originally budgeted. We just used real-time data to predict the future with way more accuracy. Okay, everything we've talked about so far, value, time, progress, it all kind of assumes one big thing, that you actually know where you're going. But what about the most difficult projects? The ones where the destination itself is a mystery. I'm talking about R&D, creating brand new software, that kind of thing. And this is where project management really splits into 2 different philosophies. The traditional way works great when things are clear. You fix the scope, you design everything up front. But for those high uncertainty projects, you've got Agile. And Agile is built for change. It expects it. The scope is flexible, and you're designing and learning as you go. So the traditional approach, what people call waterfall, is like trying to plan a year-long road trip down to every single bathroom break before you even start the car. You try to plan everything, design everything, build everything, and then have one big delivery at the very, very end. Your forecast is for a single, distant point in time. Agile just throws that whole idea out the window. Instead of one giant forecast, it makes a bunch of tiny, reliable ones. You work in these short cycles, called sprints, that are maybe 2 to 4 weeks long. At the end of every single sprint, you deliver something that actually works. And then you stop, you look at it, and you reevaluate. You're not forecasting the end of the road trip, you're just forecasting that you'll make it to the next town in 2 weeks. So, after all that, what's the bottom line? What's the big takeaway? It's that there is no magic bullet. There is no one single best way to see into the future of a project. Look, the real secret is knowing there's no single secret weapon. It's about having that full toolkit and knowing exactly which tool to pull out for which job. If your project is simple, a quick payback calculation is probably fine. If it's complex and risky, you better be using things like NPV and PERT. If you're in the thick of it, you need EVM to be your GPS. And if you're exploring the unknown, Agile is your guide, because you're forecasting what you'll discover, not just what you'll deliver. And that kind of leaves us with one last big idea to chew on. For the projects that really matter, the innovative ones, maybe the whole point of forecasting isn't just about hitting a date and a budget. Maybe the best kind of forecast is one that helps you figure out what's truly worth building in the first place.